And I get this question a lot about the words of the Lord are pure words, as silver tried in the furnace of earth, purified 7 times. Thou shalt keep them, O Lord. Thou shalt preserve them from this generation forever. And everybody likes to speculate on what those 7 times are. You know why? Because they don't know what it is. And why, it's better to make something, shoot some fireworks off from Psalm 12:6 than to study. And here's what I've heard. I never speculate. You say, what are those 7 times? I don't know. I do not know. I do not categorically say, here's the 7 times. Here's what I've heard. I've heard the Bible was translated into 6 different languages before the King James, and the English was the 7th language. Well, that's really good, isn't it? You say, then why won't you say that? Because sure as I preach that, right after church, some guy will say, oh, look here, here's another language you didn't mention. That would make English 8th. I have heard this. The King James Bible was translated in 1611. You know that there are not revisions of the King James, but there were different editions of the King James. That is a major difference. And that the one we use now, the 1769, is the 7th edition. You say, well, why don't you say that? Because sure as I say that, some guy's going to come in and say, these two are the same one, there's only 6, or here's another one, and now there's 8. Or they say, there were 6 translations into English, and the King James is the 7th. I don't proofread for anybody. I have my proofreading done by 3 different individuals and still get typos. But I don't have time. I get people, they send me manuscripts. I said, don't send me a manuscript. The guy sent me a 400-page manuscript. I looked behind my chair one day in the motorhome. It had been there for 5 years. You say, don't you feel bad about that? No, I told him not to send it. I can't. But there was a fellow from out of the country, and he wrote a book, and he asked me, I preached for him, and he said, would you proof this? I said, yeah. And he subscribes to the theory that there were 6 English translations prior to the King James, and that the King James is the 7th. Doesn't that look really impressive? And in this list of 6 pre-King James Bibles, and then the 7th one was King James, he had Gutenberg 1456. Now you're sitting there, you don't understand. Gutenberg, his Bible, was Latin. It wasn't in English. It doesn't belong in the list. So now what's wrong? Now he's only got 6, right? So I said, I wrote to him when I proofed it. I comment in red because I want it to be horrible. And so I scratched out Gutenberg. I said, brother, Gutenberg was Latin. You can't put that in a list of English Bibles. But I said, now you only have 6. So I said, add this one or this one, and then you'll have 7. Because there were 2 other English ones that he didn't have in there. And so I said, if you want 7, put this one in or this one. Now what I'm hoping is you go, oh, okay, if I put in both of those 8. But that's where it is, guys. And, okay. God, when He inspired the Old Testament, He inspired it in one language, Hebrew. Now, other than Daniel chapter 2, verse 24 to about 7, verse 28, which is in Chaldee, but basically the Old Testament is in Hebrew. Then when somebody says, well, if they don't speak English, where do they get a Bible? Where did everybody that didn't speak Hebrew get a Bible? God didn't feel obligated to the whole world to give them the perfect Word of God. Nobody told them, if you want access to the perfect Bible, learn Hebrew. But keep this in mind also. They are His chosen people, the Jews, are they not? But this wasn't like a plum, the Bible. It wasn't like a plum. It wasn't like a trophy. He also told them to go. Yeah, you know if you thought about this? Look at Matthew chapter 23. The Jews were similar to this church in one respect. They had a mission program. The Jews believed in missions. He's upbraiding the Pharisees, and usually in verse 15, we only read part of this verse because we're always looking at the downside of the Pharisees. Woe unto you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for you can pass sea and land to make one proselyte. And then we continue over the second half of the verse and jump on them. But didn't he just, guys, isn't that map? Don't you have down your hall pictures of people who do what? Can pass sea and land to make one convert. We even have evidence of the success of their mission program in Acts chapter 8, where a guy from Ethiopia, not exactly a Jewish country, was in Jerusalem worshiping because he'd been converted. So he didn't just give them the Bible, but he said, go to the world, make them all Jews. When he came to the New Testament, he put it in Greek. All right, think about this. That's the dog's language. He didn't even put the New Testament in the language of his chosen people, the Jews. But were they not also given a mandate to take the gospel? So when he put them together, Now, I'm going to tell you what I think, which you can throw out, doesn't bother me at all. I think the languages were going to be Hebrew, Greek, and Latin. Latin was the language of the Roman Empire. The three charges against the three descriptions on the cross were in what three languages? Hebrew, Greek, and Latin. You say, well, what happened to Latin? The Roman Catholic Church happened to Latin. And when they take a hold of something, that usually ruins it. And so God put the Bible in English. Now, it's not a trophy. It's not, you hear these people, oh, you people that speak English, you think you're so special. No, along with it came a mandate to take the gospel around the world. And we have done it. I'll bet you 95%, and that's maybe a lowball figure, 95% of world missionaries speak English, or they're from English-speaking countries. I was in the Philippines. Yeah, I was in the Philippines, and I met a man from South Korea who was a missionary to the Philippines. Well, see right there. He didn't speak Tagalog, and they didn't speak Hangul, Korean. The reason the guy from South Korea could minister to the Filipinos, they both spoke English. So when he did it the first time, he didn't feel obligated to anybody else. He said, if you want access to my word, read Hebrew or learn Hebrew. I imagine the Arabs like that. When he put the New Testament down, he didn't put it in Hebrew. He told his own chosen people, you want access to my perfect book? Learn Greek. So the first two times he did it in one language and did not feel. I always say this, don't obligate God to something he didn't say. And he never said, I'm giving it to you in every word, every language. So it's not inconsistent, since he did it twice already, that when he put it in one language, he told the whole world, get that language. So, help you?
Yes. Does it not seem that most KJV advocates tend to fall in one people group and generally be one primary language speakers?
God could have gone three directions from Jerusalem. And he didn't go Africa, and he didn't go Asia. He went to Europe. And those guys got that book and took it around the world. So, that he once put us on the defensive, like, ooh, what he ought to do is say, God, who do you think you are? Gone to Europe. That's what he ought to say. And I don't answer for God, but I hope that guy's saved, because I want to be there when God answers that question for him. Anything else?
No, go back to Brother Harold.
Nothing like a Bible to clear up a college education.
The King James Bible was translated in 1611. You know that there are not revisions of the King James, but there were different editions of the King James. That is a major difference.